Guys, welcome back to another edition of That Fuzz and Rock Show interviews. We got a banger for you today, man. I've been excited to do this for ever since I got contacted for it. We're going to welcome to the show none other than Josey Scott. Josey,
What's
thank you
up,
for taking
Buzz?
time, dude. Thank you for taking time out to hang out with us today. It is,
Of course,
believe me,
bro.
my pleasure for sure.
Yes, sir.
Um, so let's get right into it, man. We're going to talk about the new solo project you got going on, and we'll talk all about that in just a little bit. But let's go way back to the beginning. What first got you started in music? What made you want to be a musician?
Well, mostly it was my father. When I was a little guy, my dad was like a country gospel artist. He was a preacher, and I saw him and my sister play music for the first time in church. Was my original exposure to his music. And later on, I would hear him play, stuff like Merle Haggard and George Jones and Johnny Cash, and just had a love affair with that type of music as well. Because growing up in church for the first 8 years of my life, I didn't know anything but that, non-secular type music. And
Sure.
so I just latched onto it, really quickly, and I just wanted to be my dad. My dad was Superman.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I have what I'm going to call fast five questions. You can pass on them if you don't remember or don't want to answer it, but I got five rapid fire ones for you real quick. Do you
Oh,
remember
these
the
always
first?
get me in trouble.
No, these are all. Trust me, these are not throw under the bus questions. Do you remember the first album that you ever bought yourself?
Yes, Kiss Destroyer.
Good choice. First instrument you ever bought?
Um, I bought. My parents bought me a viola, which is a little bit larger violin.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the name of your first band?
Yes. It was with my best friend in high school. His name was Carol Gray, and the band was called Rude Awakening.
All right. I like it. How about the first gig that you guys ever played?
We actually played Love and Touching Squeezing at the high school talent show.
All right. Now this one goes for your whole career now. The biggest audience you've ever performed for.
Oh, WrestleMania 18 at the Sky Dome in Toronto. It was 90,000 people present, and I think 90 million on pay-per-view,
On a
something like that.
pay-per-view. Wow, dude. I couldn't even imagine. I mean, what were you thinking when you were on stage? Was it like did that hit you, or did you just not even realize it till later on?
Oh no, it hit me. I was just trying not to throw up. No, I was really nervous, and David, the original singer from Drowning Pool, was there, and he was such a sweet, sweet guy, and so giving as an artist, and just an absolute sweetheart. And I was excited about getting to hang out with him for the first time. We had, been ships passing in the night for a long time, and I was excited to do that with him, and I took comfort in that because he was such a sweet soul.
Yeah, man. So let's talk about early influences. What are some of your earliest influences? I mean, I know you talked about your father with the country influences, but what were some of your rock influences that kind of made you go towards the rock and roll path?
Well, the first time I ever heard rock and roll, like I said, because I grew up in the church and I was protected from secular music. I was doing some pictures with my aunt Lee at the time. She was like 14 or 15, and I was, I think, 4. And we were taking some pictures outside at my grandmother's house, and my grandmother had a little silver transistor radio that hung from her, I guess, workshop or whatever, the little building that all grandmas and grandpas have out behind their house. And it was playing I shot the sheriff.
There you go. All right.
But I didn't shoot the deaf. Don't. And I heard, my little ears heard that, and I was like, I just felt like my whole body transformed or something. I was just like, what is that? And so that was my first taste of rock and roll. And then as I got older, you know, and my sister, you know, would sneak and listen to the radio, I discovered like the Eagles and Hotel California was one of the first songs I ever heard. And then I started to discover Kiss, and you know, it was right around the time, like I said, they were putting out the Destroyer album, I believe. And then I sort of backlogged and checked out Love Gun, and then I discovered Back in Black by AC/DC. Oh, if I could be on a desert island, that would be absolutely one of the albums that I would have in tow with me. So AC/DC was a big influence. Anything, you know, growing up in Memphis, Tennessee, and hanging out, you know, Bill Street being a part of my life, and the city of Memphis being a part of my life. You know, blues, the first time I heard the blues was, you know, just a humongous impression on me, even as a little guy. You know, seeing people like Blind Mississippi Morris playing on the street in Beale Street in Memphis, and you know, Bobby Blue Bland, and all those, you know, really Delta blues guys. I realized that the music I loved that was rock and roll, like AC/DC and Kiss and Led Zeppelin, were just derivatives of this original thing over here. It was sort of like finding the without being ugly, the diluted version, and then I got back to the concentrated version of what that really originally was. So, you know, blues, big influence on me, rock and roll as well, and country music. You know, it's always been and gospel. You know, it's been always all those combined. Being a little guy from Memphis has always been a huge influence on me. And then hip hop was born in the 80s. Growing up, I was 10 years old in 1982 when I began to hear, you know, I was into stuff like the Gap Band and, you know, Parliament Funkadelic and James Brown, huge influence on me. And how it was beat oriented and drum oriented, and all the instruments followed the drums. I love what James Brown says in his movie. He says, he goes around the room and he tells each musician at rehearsal, he says, what instrument do you play? And the guy says, I play guitar, James. He goes, hell no, that ain't no guitar, that's a drum. And he goes to the next guy and he goes, what do you play? And he says, I play bass, James. And he goes, hell no, that ain't no damn bass, that's a drum. And that just defines how my mind anyway thinks about music. Is it's all around the drums. It's all around the beat of the music. Because I think all the way back to probably, you know, the tribal drums in Africa, I believe that was the sort of the nucleus of all music is it's the beat, man. And once I figured that out, I was onto something, I believe.
Yeah, it's the heartbeat and the you know, the guitars and all that stuff add to the soul of it. But yeah, the beat is definitely the heartbeat of it. So do you have anybody out there new now that's got your ear?
Oh yeah. I love there's a lot of new bands that I love. oh gosh, there's a new band called Sleep Token that
Okay.
I really, really dig.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that, like I said, is experimenting and pushing themselves um, to find out what that next level or next echelon is of music. You know, and I'm just as into pop now as rock and roll. I
Mm-hmm.
love I love a lot of the new artists that are out, like like Doja Cat and uh, um, oh gosh, I can't think all these names, but
Put you on the
but
spot, man. I'm sorry.
a lot of the new music has caught my ear, definitely. But Sleep Token's definitely one that you'll hear cranked in my car really, really, really loud.
I wrote it down. I'm going to check it out for sure. I kind of do that question selfishly because I like to hear what everybody else is into, and then I check it out and I get a broader range of music that way. I think I always want to try to expand the way my mind is with music. I don't like to focus on one thing. I like it all. I listen to
Yeah.
everything from classic to death metal. I'm into it all. So,
Mhm.
so in the early '90s, let's go to the early '90s now. You were in a band called Blackbone.
Mhm.
How did you guys first get that band together? How did that band form?
Um, I was actually a drummer for the first decade. That I was playing around Memphis and knocking around in different bands, and I uh, I knew I had a little bit of a singing voice. I didn't totally lean into it. My parents had really pushed me as a young child to you know to be a singer, and they wanted me to do country music. They wanted me to go that route. And I love country music, don't get me wrong, but that rebellious teenager in me, I wanted to be the opposite of whatever my parents wanted. So
Sure.
for the first 10 years, I played drums and, were in bands that, played a lot of covers. In those days, you played, you know, AC/DC, of course, and
Mhm.
Motley Crue and Rat and all that stuff that was going
Absolutely.
on.
Yeah.
And then I just looked down at my hands one day, and my hands were shredded to ribbons because I couldn't stop playing music. I was so in
Yep.
love with my first love, being music. I couldn't, whatever instrument I played, I would play it until my hands would bust open and bleed. And my mother came in my bedroom. I think I was 15 or 16, and she said, she just put her hands on my hands and she said, "Son, you have to stop. You're bleeding." I literally had blood dripping off the end of my elbows
Wow.
from playing drums. And I just looked down at my hands one day and I said, "What am I doing? I can sing. Why am I doing this to myself?" So I started to experiment with singing in my bedroom and really trying to make an attempt at being a rock singer. And I auditioned for a couple of bands around Memphis. I was in a band there in town called Human Zoo for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And back in those days, we had Tora Tora and Roxy Blue, who were doing really good, and bands to the untrained eye, it just looked like people were just getting deals left and right back
Right.
then,
Right.
And so I wanted to be a part of that scene, and ended up one of these these two chicks had an apartment, and everybody, that was sort of the central rock and roll hub of Memphis. Like, people would come, all the bands would come and go through these two chicks' apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And by hanging out at those girls' apartment, I ran into Rudy Forrester and Cristobaldo and our bass player Cheese. He was this really gorgeous guy. He looked like Sebastian Bach. And, if you looked like Sebastian Bach back in those days, you were the cat's pajamas.
You're in. Yep. Absolutely.
And so and we called him Cheese because we thought it was hilarious that because he was the goofiest, nerdiest guy, but he looked like a Greek god. So, and he always attracted a lot of chicks. So we were like, hey, if you can play it all, you could be in this band.
Hell yeah, man. Absolutely.
But yeah, Cheese was our bass player, a really great bass player, good songwriter. And a guy named Tony Smith was the original drummer in that band. And then we eventually parted ways with him and ended up with a guy named Trent Anderson from Chicago. And yeah, that was my first foray into real touring, traveling, paying my dues, busting up the road, in the 90s type band. That was my first experience into that. So I call Blackbone my boot camp. It was definitely boot camp. And I have a lot of great memories from that band.
Well, that's a good thing. So getting back to what you were saying about, the blood dripping down your arms, playing drums and stuff. And you said that you realize you're like, wait a minute, why am I doing this? I can sing. Usually that moment comes, if you're not bleeding, it comes when you're loading out after a gig at like 2 a.m. You're like 5 below. And you're like, what am I doing? I can sing. Why am I doing this shit? Where the singer walks by with the mic stand, like, yo, man, I'll see you later. And you're just starting to pack the bed. You know what I mean? That's usually the pivotal time when that, like, wait a minute, I can sing. What the fuck am I doing? But yeah, bleeding definitely tells you, like, I got to do something else. And hopefully I get back to them. You know what? I'm going to ask you about it now. I'm going to kind of break the chain a little bit, but I'm going to ask you about it now. So, and I'm going to dip into Saliva real quick, and then we'll talk about Blackbone a little bit more. But okay. So I think it's the video for Your Disease, where at the end you throw the mic stand down and it pops back up.
Yeah.
Was that design, or did that just actually happen?
No, that was just something that happened. The director was the guy that did all the Saturday Night Live promos at the time.
Okay.
David Fuller, I can't remember his name. I know his first name was David.
Yep.
And he was an amazing talent, and really knew how to get the best out of what time we had, and this was back in the day when record companies were still spending, $500,000, $1 million on a video.
Right.
And so the budget was, no obstacle, which we were very grateful for, and certainly not used to, growing up as poor kids in Memphis, Tennessee. I called my mother and told her that the suit, this leather suit they bought me for the video was $5,000, and she literally dropped the phone and said, "What?" She goes, "Do you know how many car payments and house payments you could make with $5,000?"
And that's for one video.
I said, "It's not my money, Mom. It's not my money. It's their money. Eventually it'll be my money, but for now it's their money."
Right.
So, but yeah, that was totally organic. It was the end of the video. I had injured myself the day before that video playing golf like an idiot. I was playing golf in Los Angeles at this beautiful golf course, and I went home back to the Oakwoods, which is where all the bands and little young actors stayed that were doing like soap operas and modeling commercials.
Right.
So it was like summer camp for assholes, I guess. And people called it the Coke Woods because there was so much drugs and partying going on there. But
yeah,
and I think like Corey Haim died there or something.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But we were staying. We were staying there, and I had slept on the couch and pinched a nerve or something in my neck, and I had what football players call a stinger.
Yep.
In my back, and I was just in excruciating pain. Record company sent me to the hospital. The doctor literally came in and didn't even x-ray me or anything. He goes, "Morphine or Dilaudid?" And I was like, I'd heard my dad, who had several back surgeries, talk about Dilaudid. So I was like, Dilaudid. So he comes back in, shoots me full of this freaking Dilaudid, and the pain finally went away. And
sure.
I was so relieved, Fuzz, by the pain going away that I cried. It was such a relief because I was literally dying. It was just like, they say 1 to 10, what's your pain? Mine was definitely a hard 10.
Right.
And so when that pain finally went away, I got back on the set of the video, and I was just sort of in the clouds a little bit there towards the end of that video.
For sure.
And David suggested, he goes, why don't you, when you say your disease is killing me at the end of the song, he said, just throw the mic stand, just throw it at the camera. I said, well, I don't want to hurt somebody. It's like,
right,
the camera guy's right there. He goes, don't worry about us, we're fine. You just throw the mic stand at the camera and we'll see what happens. So if you know this, you can tell, and you know me, you can tell I kind of tepidly let go of this mic stand,
right,
just far enough to go forward, but not far enough to club the freaking camera guy
right.
in the forehead. So, and this was the first take. I tossed it in the air, it hit the ground and bounced up, and did this, and then I was like, no way, it's not going to stand up. And then it stood up, and I was like, no way did that just happen. And then David goes, cut. He goes, please check the gate. Did we get that? Please say we got that. But yeah, that was totally organic, a really special moment. And it was like watching a kickoff at the Super Bowl. It was just, we were off to the races. After that, everything got really crazy and fast. Yep. And all my dreams, everything as my mother would say, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it.
You might get it, right?
Everything took off after that. It was off to the races.
So getting back to Blackbone, what led you guys breaking up the band?
Oh, just, we were young. You were young and your heart. We were young, and, we had been together since about 91, and we lasted till about 95. We were at that, what bands call that 5-year marriage point, where you're either going to stay together or you're going to fucking kill each other. Right. And so, we just kind of imploded. We had dumped our money into a bus, and we were losing a lot of money. And when things begin to go wrong in a 5-way marriage, which is definitely what a band is,
sure.
4 or 5 or 7 or 9. If you're Slipknot way marriage, you begin to have differences, and if you don't cognizantly take a forward motion or a forward step in resolving those issues, you're not going to make it. And we just fell prey to those pitfalls, quite frankly, to be honest with you. As they say, if I'm telling the truth, we just, we got at each other's throats, and there were some fights, and some people knew how to push each other's buttons. And, when you hang out with a guy for 24 hours a day for 5 years, you learn everything about him. There's no privacy or individuality anymore. You're right. Just like in a marriage, the 5 become 1, and it's like in a marriage, the 2 become 1.
Sure.
And once you do that, you learn everything about each other, and you learn what each other's hot buttons are, and you learn what makes each other tick, and you begin to, sort of pick at that tag a little bit, you know, and it just we were young and dumb, and you know, we made the mistakes that young bands make. I don't blame anybody. You know, you have to have forgiveness in your heart. You know, if you want to find forgiveness, you got to give forgiveness.
100%.
And it took me about $100,000 worth of therapy to figure all that out.
Right. So that brings us to 96. Saliva gets together. How did you form Saliva? How did that start?
Well, when I left Blackbone, I remember riding home on the bus on the last final show, the final road show that we did with Blackbone. And I had my head leaned against the glass, and I was just looking out the bus window, and I was like, I'm going to learn from every mistake I have made in this band. Number one, I'm going to go for this again. And not only am I going to go for it again, but I'm going to sift through all the problems that I ran into because I didn't know any better.
Right.
Such as, for all those young bands out there, I mean, it's a completely different business nowadays, of course, but I wanted to find a manager, not a manager who wanted to throw a contract down in my face and hand me a pen, but a manager who was jumping up and down for me and who believed in me and who saw the talent in me, or saw the vision in me and where I wanted to go.
Sure.
I was going to find that guy. I was going to find a good lawyer to you know, sift through all this entertainment law that's out there that is made to fuck musicians and young kids up. It's built. It's literally built to fuck them.
Yep.
So I was, you know, going to find somebody who was, you know, had a good acumen at entertainment law. And I wanted to go around and unrepentantly hire the best musicians in Memphis. You know, I had a chip on my shoulder, and I was like, I'm gonna go around to all my favorite bands, and I'm gonna pick out all my favorite guys, and that's gonna be this new band that I've come up with. And I was trying to come up with the name on the way home on that last trip, and I was like, it's got to be like Nirvana. It's got to already be a household word, but like a good 3-syllable name, like, you know, something that's commercially known, that's already a household word. So
sure.
But it's got to have an edge, and it's got to be able to piss parents off a little bit, but make kids kind of grossed out, but wonder what it is, type thing.
Right.
And I came up with Saliva. I was like, that's kind of cool. I was like, I think I'm going to go with Saliva. And that was my plan. I went home with a brand new plan. I locked myself in my bedroom at my mother's house, and went into, I started to discover my mental health. I didn't know what depression was, and I didn't know what obsessive compulsive disorder was. We didn't know these things back in the late 80s, early 90s,
sure,
to mid 90s. These things weren't known.
Right.
So my mother was a mental health professional. She was a hospital administrator at Midtown Mental Health in Memphis. And I just began to study mental health and the effect that different things were having on me, and why I was depressed, and why I was sad, and why these things were happening to me. And then my father died, which, you know, was just devastating. He was 50 years old. He was younger than me now. He was in the 9th month of his 50th year, and had a massive heart attack out on the road in Syracuse, New York, by the way.
Mm.
They stopped at a truck stop, and my dad went in to get some refreshments and opened the door to the truck stop and just hit the ground. And
Wow.
my dad was like a cat. Anytime like when we would wrestle and he would fall down, he always landed on his hands. He was a Vietnam vet and this big time Army guy, you know. Shout out to all the armed services out there that protect us and take care of us. But he was a Vietnam vet and a total Army guy, and always landed on his hands. Well, when he fell and he had that heart attack, he didn't brace himself and he broke his nose when he fell. And that told me that my father was already dead before he hit the ground, which gives me some comfort. You know, I know that he wasn't in pain. I know that he slipped on out of this world and never was hurting or hooked up to a bunch of machines. And, you know, it was hard to see that at the time because I was so blinded with heartbreak and pain.
Sure.
But through the years, I began to, you know, make peace with that and realize that, thank God he was, you know, dead before he hit the ground. So then I really got a good taste of real heartbreak and real depression. More was to come. But for that moment, it was my first, you know, I was 25 years old. It was my first experience with losing a loved one that was so close to me, you know.
Sure.
And he was my bus driver. He was Blackbone's bus driver. He was my right-hand man. He was more like a brother than he was a father, you know.
Sure.
He was my best friend. And when he passed away, it was 97 was just a shit year, man. Gianni Versace got killed. Princess Diana got killed. It was just a horrible fucking year, man.
It sure was.
So I just, you know, like I said, I locked myself in my bedroom at my mother's house and just began to write and write and write and write and write. And I wrote, I think, 30 songs.
Wow.
And then once I got comfortable with the material I had, I took my little cheap Hoya acoustic guitar and I hit the road there in Memphis. And I went, just like I promised myself, I went around to all the great bands that I loved in Memphis and pulled out the guys that I idolized. Wayne Sweeney was the guitar player for a band called TNA. And they were huge in Memphis. They were that band that you just didn't understand how they didn't get a record deal.
Right.
You were just shocked and in awe that they weren't as big as Guns N' Roses. Like there was no excuse for it.
No.
And so I went to him, and he was jamming with Todd Poole from Roxy Blue at the time. They were doing a little band called Sugar Ditch. And I went and found him in a studio. I think it was Ardent Studios there in Memphis. And I said, man, I'm putting a new band together and I want you to be my lead guitar player. He goes, well, I'm kind of busy. I'm recording. I said, I know. It's no problem. You just, you know, do your thing and record what you got to do. Do what you got to do here. I said, but I want you to be in my new project that I'm putting together. And me and DeBaldo were a package deal from Blackbone. So I had my rhythm guitar player, had my lead guitar player. And then the first practice we had was in Todd Poole's basement. And this guy, Matt Dees, was the bass player at the time. He was the one jamming with Todd in that band Sugar Ditch that I mentioned. And he just, I don't know, he just wasn't into it. And said the next day, he said, you know, I thought we were putting together a band with Todd and I'm going to go do my own thing. And so I immediately went out and got the other guy that I had my eye on was Dave Novotny from a band called Gemini Clan there in Memphis. And he came the next night, he brought his equipment into the rehearsal space, and we wrote Flight 800 right away.
Wow.
So he was, you know, a shoe in. So, and Todd Poole was playing drums for about the first 8 months of the band. And amazing drummer, amazing songwriter, such a good songwriter, true Memphis guy, you know. And he got into a motorcycle accident and had to leave the band.
Yeah.
So I went and got the other guy that I had my eye on, which was Paul Crosby. And he was in a band called Mother Crush, and had been in another band called 10 Pound Sledge that I really, really loved. And he had the coolest, you know, he had long dreadlocks, and he was just this ball of black hair, and he would sling his hair all around, and was just a hell of a performer live. He was one of those drummers that put on a show of his own.
There you go.
And that reminded me of Tommy Lee, and anything like Tommy Lee, I wanted some of that, you know.
Hell yeah.
And he was actually retiring from the music industry because he was doing a hellacious heat and air business. He was like killing hundreds of thousands of dollars doing heat and air. And he said, man, my wife's not going to let me do it. He goes, I'm doing really well at this heat and air stuff, and I just don't think my wife's going to do it. I said, let me talk to her. What balls I had at 25. Man.
I guess, right?
So I went over, and his wife was a dear friend of mine, Lindy Sue. And I went over and talked to Lindy Sue, and I said, Lindy, if you will just trust me and let me borrow your husband for a year, I will get him a record deal. And if I don't, I will safely deliver him back to you. No harm, no foul. And she just looked at the ground, and she looked up at me, and she said, if it was anybody else, you could go fuck off.
Wow.
She said, but because it's you, I'll let Paul do this. And I knew that was one of those moments, like when I threw the mic stand, I just knew in my heart that things were about to change and about to get better. And, you know, we formed the band. We began to write songs like Mad Men for the next 6-8 months. We went into Beale Street and started playing all the clubs, and we played the Omni New Daisy on Beale Street, which was our like home base type place. It held about 1,000 kids, and that was just our, you know, kick-ass home base that we would always have our shows at. And you know, one by one, the record companies began to come showcase us, as they call it, and we began to get some traction with the album that we had recorded, the first Saliva album. We call it the Black Album, just a sort of nameless, self-titled first LP. And you know, the fans were demanding something. You know, they wanted some kind of product, and so we would go to all the record stores and consign like 20 copies out to Cats Records and 20 copies out to this Sam Goody and the different record stores back when they had record stores.
Yeah, right.
And we were literally selling them out of the trunk of our car on Beale Street, with 3 6 Mafia right beside us selling their CDs out of their trunk. They were just driving a Lexus, and we were driving like a Toyota Corolla or something.
Right.
But dear friends of ours too, 3 6 Mafia, they helped out a lot with our career. Definitely helped us along the way. Certainly helped me as a singer. You know, got me work when I didn't have work going on when I was home. They got me on Little White's album. They got me on one of their albums. So I'm really thankful for 666 Mafia. And, you know, a couple of local DJs began to play us there in Memphis. And finally, all the record companies started to say, who the hell is this band that's selling 10,000 units of their own album and has airplay and all this other shit in Memphis? Who are these guys? So one by one, they started to come, and we had Capitol Records and Atlantic Records and RCA Records and Interscope Records, and every one of them, Epic. One by one, they came, and they came and they would court us and fly us out to New York or Los Angeles and put us up in these beautiful hotels, and they promise you the world and say that everything's going to be, tits, and
right.
and then we would showcase in front of these guys in suits with their arms folded like this, and we would play our hearts out, and then they would come up and say, I think we're going to take a pass. And I was just like, after this happened like 4 or 5 times, I was just like,
it's like a punch in the gut every time, right?
Yeah, I was like, what the hell, man? The guy from Capitol Records was the one that hurt my feelings the most. He said they courted us really hard, and we had been warned. Somebody warned us. They said, be careful of the Capitol cold. And I said, what's Capitol cold? And they said, well, they come after you hot and heavy, and then they get cold feet right at the end, and you just need to be ready for that. And that had happened, like I said, 4 or 5 times. So I was pretty much ready for it. So they flew us out to Los Angeles. We, went to all these amazing dinners and went and watched the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl would have some significance later. I didn't understand why at the time, but, we watched the Super Bowl, and we stayed at the Roosevelt Hotel, which Marilyn Monroe had stayed at. And it's my first time in Los Angeles, so I'm just baptized in all this, Hollywood-ism.
Sure.
And at the end of the showcase, they stood there with their arms folded and, their $5,000 suits. And we got off stage, and this English guy from Capitol walked up to me, and he said, good show, mate. He said, but you know what? Why should I sign you when I can go down the street and sign the next Jonathan Davis? And I said,
Wow.
Thank you. I said, you know what, sir? I appreciate your time. I appreciate you having us here, and we'll see you on down the road, brother.
Wow.
And that was that. So, by the time Island Def Jam came along, we were, or myself anyway, I had done got pissed about it. You know what I mean? I had become a bit disgruntled by that point. And,
understandable.
They came down and saw us. Rob Stevenson, the one of their A&R people, came down and saw a show, and he was interested, and he's like, I'm going to take this back, and we're going to talk about it and everything. So next thing you know, I was on a conference call with my manager at the time, Brian Coleman, brilliant man, great manager with Union Entertainment, just an amazing manager, and the producer that we were working with at the time, Bob Marlette, incredible producer. We were on the phone with Rob Stevenson and their head of A&R and Leor Cohen, the CEO. And so my little baby nuts are like drawn up into my stomach at this point. So we go through this phone call, and the head of A&R guy, he said, well, you know what? He goes, we're going to fly you guys out to New York. We're going to put you up in a hotel, and we're going to rent a rehearsal space that all the big bands rehearse at, and we're going to set you guys up. I said, let me stop you right there. I said, with all due respect, sir, I'm not bringing my guys to New York City. I'm not going to drag my band up to New York City and stay in some 5-star hotel just so you can rent a beautiful rehearsal space and we can go play our hearts out to a room full of suits with their arms folded just to tell us you guys pass. I'm not doing it. And I said, furthermore, I want you to come to me. I said, this is what I would like. I said, you come to Memphis. You let us sell out the Daisy and pack it with 1,000 kids that are literally ready to tear that place to the ground and set it on fire, and let me go out there and rock that fucking party for an hour and a half, and then you can tell me no. And there was like this long 30 seconds of silence. It felt like 30 seconds. It was probably more like 7 or 8, but there was this long silence, and then I heard Leor go, "We will do that." He was like this. He had like this Dolph Lundgren type. He's a Israeli special forces soldier,
right.
In his youth, and he has a Dolph Lundgren type voice, and he goes,
"Right,
Josey, we will do this. We will come to Memphis, and we will watch you rock the fucking party at the Omni New Daisy on Deal Street." And I was like, on the other end of the phone, I was like, dude, you just either ended your career or shot it out of a cannon. So thank God they took, that answer and came down to Memphis, and they watched us play, and we blew up the spot. And the next thing you know, they had contracts on the table, and the lawyers were going back and forth. And I was like, well, let's just sign the damn thing. Our lawyer was like, no, this is
slow down.
We let's just slow down, take a beat here.
Yeah.
We go. He said, they offer, then we offer, then they offer, then we rebut, then they offer. He goes, this is a normal thing. He goes, it'll probably go on for 3 weeks or a month, and we'll get it done. Don't worry about it. The deal's on the table. It's the deal's on the table. So I just tried to keep myself calm, cool, and collected. And then they sent the record deal was okayed, and they overnighted it to my house, and they lost the contract in post, dude. The post people lost the freaking contract, and I was literally chewing my fingers down to my knuckles and worried about this. So little things like that always have happened, and probably everybody's career, but certainly mine. Those moments where you, like my lawyer said one time, he said, Josey, he said, it's like we're snake bit. But finally got the deal, and everything went through, and the rest is history.
Yeah, you guys had a hell of a run. Eight albums, Grammy nominated. I mean, big tours. What actually led to you leaving the band?
I think I wasn't, like my mom said, like I say in the lyrics of Click, Click, Boom, I say, why is my mother always right? And she had warned me, she said, be careful for what you ask for. She told me she'd always say these prophetic things at key moments in my life. And the night we got signed or whatever at the Daisy, she said, she looked me right in my eyes, and she put her hands on my face, and she said, nothing will ever be the same after tonight. And she was right. Nothing was the same. But I got to a point where the be careful what you wish for thing started to bite me in the ass a little bit. We just weren't ready for fame, man. And we weren't ready for money. We weren't ready for all these accoutrements that come with, with being in a popular American rock band. We thought we were,
Sure.
You always think you're ready, you think you can handle these things, and you're like, bring it the fuck on. Let's do this. Let's do the damn thing,
Sure.
And it, the party happened, and we just didn't know when to leave the party. We never knew. Nobody teaches you these things out of the gate, and we just got under the wheels of litigation and money and percentages, and it just becomes this whole other animal that it wasn't in the beginning. In the beginning, it was about the music, and it was about the nucleus of the band, and it was about your influences, and it was about your first love, and this beautiful puppy that you just petted and took care of. And there towards the end, it was like it was like that movie Tommy Boy, when when he takes the muffin or the roll, and he's like, "You kill it."
Yep.
Chris Farley, I love Chris Farley, man.
Oh, yeah.
Sweet soul. And that's what happened. That's what happened. The short answer is, and I can't speak for the other guys in the band. Dave fought valiantly through that. He was a good businessman. Dave Novotny, the bass player, he was good at keeping our books balanced. He was. I trusted him. And still trust him to this day. He sort of divvied out the money at the end of the night, and he did the best he could. He kind of got under the wheels of the bus a little bit. Paul as well, Chris Baldo as well, and Wayne Sweeney as well. But like I said, I can't speak for their journey. The four of them have their own journey, and they're survivors in their own right. Certainly, Wayne Sweeney and Paul Crosby are just flourishing these days, and I'm so proud of them and so supportive of them. But I think for that moment in time, we were riding the bus, and then we were under the bus. And for me, I was dealing with, like I said earlier, I was dealing with my mental health. I didn't know how to navigate that still. I was still sort of finding my legs as far as my mental health went. And then you throw drugs and alcohol into that situation, and it just became I just became a dumpster fire, after a while. And I was trying to keep my marriage together, got married in 2004. And during the heat of all this fame and everything happening with Saliva, I was trying to keep my marriage together, which is hard, trying to keep a 5-way marriage together with the band, and trying to keep a 2-way marriage together at home.
Sure.
And I knew I didn't want to lose my wife, because I've been in love with her since the day I met her. So I didn't want to lose her. And, we were having children. We had my son Justice in 2006, and he's 16 now. And we had 2010, we were pregnant with a little girl, I think is what changed things for me. I had always wanted a little girl.
Yeah.
I had 3 boys, and I just always wanted a little girl. And once I knew a little girl was on the way, I knew that was the bell tolling for me.
Perspective changes immediately, right?
Yeah. My perspective just blew up, and I was like, I've got to step back from this if I want to live. You know, I just had this, my mother called it this knowing inside me that said, if you want to live, if you want to survive this, you're going to have to step away and let go of what you love the most, and step back and get healthy and you know, make some choices for your children, you know, because I believe once we have children, we lose the luxury of just doing whatever the hell we want. And for my children, I wanted to take a step back and, you know, get healthier and spend more time with my wife, spend more time with my children, save my marriage. And it's the smartest decision I ever made. I wouldn't change it. I'd do it 1,000 times.
No, that's you made the right sacrifice. That's for sure. So let's talk about you and Chad Kroeger hooked up with in 2003 and came out with a little tiny song called Hero, which wound up extremely blowing up. I mean, that was the song. It was off the Spider-Man soundtrack. How did you guys hook up together? How did you guys come together on that?
Well, Leor Cohen, again, was, you know, such an instrumental force in both our careers. Chad being on Roadrunner Records at the time, and him being the CEO of our label, he had this idea. He goes, what if we get their biggest rock band and our biggest rock band and put the singers together and see what they can come up with? And so I got the call out on the road, and they were like, do you want to fly up to Canada on your next couple of weeks off and hang out with Chad Kroeger from Nickelback? And Leor wants to see if you guys can maybe write a song together. You know, there's a opportunity with Sony Records with the Spider-Man soundtrack. And if you guys can write a decent song, there's a possible opportunity there to get it on that soundtrack. And they already had their lead single. I believe it was a song by Sum 41. It was like a punk rock song.
Yep.
And they already had their lead single. They were already ready to push that record. They just wanted another song to go along with that soundtrack to Spider-Man. I was like, hell yeah. I was like, man, I've been a Spider-Man fan since I was knee high to a grasshopper, dude.
Right,
I'm all about it. And so I flew up to Vancouver, which is just a breathtaking town. I love that city so much. God, it's beautiful. And they have the best sushi. I learned from hanging out with Chad that the freaking sushi there is just ridiculous. And so we met in the studio there in Vancouver. We tried a couple of different ideas. He wanted to do something like a derivative of Click Click Boom. He wanted to do like another Click Click Boom. And I was not completely opposed to that, but I was just like, well, I've done that. You know, I don't want to do that again. I want to do something different. You know, I was like, if you got anything, you know, that you're working on that's a little bit different. And he goes, well, I got this one song. He goes, but the guys in Nickelback hate it and they don't want to do it. And he goes, I think it's pretty cool. He goes, but it's an acoustic song. I said, shit, let's hear it, you know? And he played me the meat and potatoes of Hero. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, this is pretty special, man. This sounds like something that would be on a superhero movie soundtrack. It reminded me of I remember when Batman came out with Val Kilmer, that song by Seal, "Kiss from a Rose,"
Yeah.
came out, and I remember going to the theater and seeing that song being played while the credits rolled, and I was just like, oh man, it was just such an emotional impact on me as a wannabe songwriter. And when I heard that Hero, like I said, the meat and potatoes of Hero for the first time, I called, opened the door to the studio, and I screamed for my A&R guy, Rob Stevenson. I was like, Rob, you got to get in here, man. You got to hear this. So we played it again, and the record company people were blown away and really loved it. And then and Chad was like, well, let us play around with it for a while and knock this thing together. So we, got all the harmonies the way they were supposed to go, and picked out all our parts, and what he was going to do and what I was going to do. And because we were going to try to do it, I was like, this has got to be a duet, like Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn. I was like, I get to be Conway Twitty. You have to be Loretta. No, but we fooled around with it for probably another hour or two, and then it was slamming. It was to the point where we were like, well, let's, we had access to the studio the whole night. We were like, let's lay this fucker down, man. Let's record this. Yep. And we spent the rest of the night. We were up to like 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning, recording the demo, just the demo of Hero, and got all the harmonies perfect and all the parts, and then we sent it off to those people at Sony, and I really wasn't ready for the reaction that Sony had. They were ready to stop the presses and throw away all the albums that they had printed so far. They just got rid of them like magic, and then reprinted them with Hero as the lead single. And I was just like, what is happening, man? What the fuck just happened? And so then some crazy stuff happened in my career. Of course, I was my own worst enemy and couldn't get out of my own way, and got full of drugs and alcohol or whatever one night, got into a fight. And the next day, the label was like, you got to go to rehab, bro. You got to go get cleaned up. You at least got to go take a break and get cleaned up.
Sure.
And I was young and running wide open. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And, as my daddy would say, like a case knife. I was wide open. And so I said, I'll do it. I was like, but can you get my idol on the phone to tell me, to help me, to help me get into rehab? They were going to send me to Promises out in Los Angeles, mm-hmm. which ended up being a really nice rehab. Nothing I could have ever afforded.
Sure.
And so next thing you know, I get off the phone with the label. 5 minutes later, I'm sitting there with my son, and we're watching a Disney movie. I was spending some time with my son, Cody, that passed. And 5 minutes later, the phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and dude goes, yeah, man, this is Nikki Sixx. I just wanted to call and talk to you a little bit and see how you're feeling. And I was like, no fucking way, man. Wow. No way is this Nikki Sixx, dude. And we just began to talk to each other, man. And he is one of the kindest, most giving individuals that I ever have had the pleasure of running across in this life, man. He was my idol growing up, and I had his posters in my room, and I wanted to be him. I did my hair just like him and wore my leather pants and ripped up shirt just like him. I even I would put 2 black stripes under my eye like him. And then to get to talk to him on the phone in such a vulnerable place in my life.
Sure.
And for him to be so kind and giving and delicate with me was just such a blessing, man. And I'll never forget it. I will always owe my life to Nikki Sixx, because he made it so easy. He told me, he goes, dude, don't worry about nothing. He said, go pack a bag. He said, pack you some comfortable pajama-like clothes, bring some sneakers, and, you know, pack you enough cigarettes to get through 30 days. And he goes, go to the airport there in Memphis. He goes, there's a plane ticket waiting on you. He said, all you got to do is get on the plane, brother. Just pack your little bag, go get on the plane. He goes, wow. And I will be on the other end of that plane in Los Angeles to receive you, and I will take you to Promises and deliver you myself. And you know, we became, you know, really close buddies after that, you know, and hearing everything that he had been through with drugs and alcohol. And, you know, this was before the Heroin Diaries or The Dirt had came out. So
right.
He gave me, you know, like an up close and personal preview of what that was going to consist of, and what that was really like for him. And my issues were a walk in the woods compared to Nikki's. And
right. Yeah. He's been through a lot.
I just never, you know, he had died like 5 or 6 times and was revived there at Cedar Sinai in Los Angeles. And they got so used to Nikki coming in dead. They were just like, oh, here we go again. Nikki Sixx.
He got a frequent flyer card from them.
He did. He had a frequent flyer card to the afterlife, I think.
I think so.
But yeah, like I said, no, you will not meet a more kind, giving, loving, genuine, real person than Nikki Sixx, man.
So let's bring us right to today's time. New brand, new band. Tell us about, how am I going to put this? Tell us about the new Josey Scott 2.0.
Well, I'm working on this new project called Shade Violent, and it's a collection of some friends of mine here where I live in Oklahoma, and my stepson Dylan is Dynamite Delone is my rhythm guitar player, and we're just in the process of writing a record right now, and we're just now getting in the studio and starting to figure some things out. We've done a couple of shows, you know, a couple of startup shows, a couple in Tulsa, and we're going to do a little run through Texas, I believe, and we had to cancel some shows because of COVID up in Ohio and Indiana, Michigan, up at the Machine Shop. Shout out to the Machine Shop. I love those guys. I hated to have to cancel that show. Fucking COVID, man. It's been awful.
Yeah, it's definitely.
I hate even having to say that word.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're just getting it together and sort of sussing things out. And I just want to, I want, my mission is to get back to that kid in Memphis that as one of my favorite producers, Malcolm Springer in Nashville, said, where's that kid that used to run around with the green notebook full of lyrics under his arm and the backpack and a black blazer? Where's that kid at? And that's exactly where I'm trying to find my way back to that kid. I'm trying to find my way back to that first love, why I fell in love with music in the first place, and why I think music is so beautiful and so moving. And it's a chance. I'm working with Scatterbrains a producer out of Nashville.
Yep.
And he told me, he said, this is an opportunity for you to tell your story. He said, that's what this is about. At 50, when, you've gone through the arc of your first arc of a musical career, and you've done some wonderful things, and you've been through some horrible things. And he said, it's time for you to tell your story.
There you go.
And I think that's my mission, is to get back to why I fell in love with music in the first place, and to tell my story, and to join those two hands together.
Well, I definitely appreciated you, hanging out and telling your story with me. I've had a blast with this so far. So
Yeah,
getting back to the album, you guys said you're working on it. Is there any timeline for the album being done, or are you just kind of
not at the moment? I mean, we're just sort of, taking it fast and loose. We're not really putting a time limit on it. I would like to get it out over the next 3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely planning on dropping a single in the next 3 or 4 months, definitely. But I just want to pay more attention to the music and make sure that everything is right and perfect this time, because it's a privilege and an honor to kind of finally be in the driver's seat and be the captain of my own soul,
There you go.
And not have to answer, to the whims of others,
Sure.
what I mean? Yeah. I'm not bad mouthing that in any kind of way. I just want a chance, like I said, to tell my story.
And then, so are you guys going to start doing more dates touring wise, just to kind of work the music out, or?
Yeah, I mean, we been playing a couple of startup shows, just getting all the back catalog tight, getting
Mm-hmm.
all the hits, and we're possibly going to do. I'd like to do maybe a Blackbone song. I'd like to do some Saliva songs.
Mm-hmm.
that I was privileged enough to write with the guys.
Sure.
And then I want to play the new stuff as well.
So listen,
sort of have a then to now sort of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like a catalog of your music career. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Josey, listen, man, I have taken way too much of your time as it is. I'm sure your PR lady's going to probably kill me for taking all this time, but
no, man, I had a great time, Buzz. Thank you for having me.
Dude, I did too, brother. I can't. It's it's just you're an easy dude to talk to, and hopefully you will. Hopefully you come back and do it again, because we can talk tour stories and the whole 9 yards. I mean, we didn't even talk about your appearance. You had some appearances in movies and TVs, but so that'll be the question I'll save for hopefully next time if you want to come back.
Absolutely,
that'd be cool.
Absolutely, I'd love to, man. I loved talking to you, Fuzz. You're an easy guy to talk to, and I had a great time. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Josey. Folks, you guys can keep your eye out for Josey Scott's new project. It's Shade Violent. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Look for big things from you, Josey, and looking forward to the new music. For more info, guys, you can go to facebook.com. And I'm not sure if I have these right, so if you correct me if I'm wrong, facebook.com/Josey Scott Music.
Josey Scott Rocks.
Josey Scott Rocks. Okay, I'm sorry. I read the wrong one. And YouTube is Josey Scott Music.
Yeah, I believe the YouTube is Josey Scott Rocks too.
Is it? Okay.
We've sort of transitioned it all into Josey Scott Rocks.
Got you. So JoseyScottRocks.com, that website still good?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So that's probably got all the links to it. Go check that out, guys, and look for big things from Josey coming soon. I can't wait to hear it, brother. Listen, please come back sometime. We'll talk again, man.
Absolutely, Fuzz. Thank you for having me, brother.
Been my absolute pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Josey Scott. Thanks, Josey.